The staff at Bordeaux Hall moved with practiced elegance, but beneath their polished veneer, panic rippled like an electric current. Crystal glasses were adjusted a third time. White tablecloths smoothed obsessively. The executive chef barked orders with unusual sharpness, his normally confident voice now clipped with tension. "She's coming," whispered Anna, the hostess clutching her reservation book until her knuckles whitened. The three words spread through the restaurant like a winter chill. Servers exchanged glances of dread, their eyes darting toward the front entrance between tasks. Martin, the restaurant manager, pulled Anna aside, his voice low and urgent. "Is everything perfect for Miss Harrington's table? The 82 Bordeaux is breathing, the special china is set." "Yes, everything's exactly as she specified," Anna replied, though her trembling hands betrayed her confidence. "Table 12, corner position, southern exposure, no draft." And the last server who disappointed her was fired on the spot. Martin reminded, straightening his already impeccable tie. "Victoria Harrington doesn't tolerate mistakes." The sommelier approached, perspiration beading his forehead despite the restaurant's carefully controlled temperature. "The wine is ready, but is it the right vintage? The 82 was exceptional, but what if she prefers the 79 tonight? Should we have both ready?" Martin closed his eyes briefly, summoning calm he didn't feel. "Both, definitely both, and have the 86 as backup." Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, a sleek black Bentley pulled to the curb. The valet rushed forward, his movements stiff with anticipation. The restaurant collectively held its breath. In the far corner of Bordeaux Hall, Robert Morgan sat alone at table 14, unaware of the approaching storm. His calloused hands rested lightly on the pristine tablecloth, the skin rough from years of honest work. The single glass of water before him remained untouched, as if he feared making even that small impression on such an elegant setting. His navy button-down shirt was clean, and pressed the collar slightly frayed from too many washes. The watch on his wrist, a simple Timex with a worn leather band, had been a gift from Jennifer on their 10th anniversary 4 months before the diagnosis that changed everything. Robert checked the time again, feeling the familiar weight of memory as his finger traced the watch's scratched face. 4 years had passed since he'd held Jennifer's hand as she slipped away, leaving him to raise their daughter alone. 4 years of bedtime stories told, in a voice that fought to stay steady. 4 years of school lunches packed with notes tucked inside. 4 years of being both father and mother to a little girl who still sometimes cried for the woman neither of them would ever stop missing. He straightened his shoulders, remembering why he'd agreed to this dinner in the first place. His friend Dave had been relentless. "You've got more practical knowledge than those college boys with fancy degrees," Dave had insisted last week over beers in Robert's modest backyard. "Your problem is nobody who matters has seen what you can do. You need to meet the right people, shake the right hands." Robert had laughed then, gesturing to his weathered work boots. "People like that don't see people like me, Dave. They look right through us." Dave had pushed the business card across the table anyway. A client of his from the insurance company. Someone connected, someone who might need a skilled facilities manager for their new development project. "Just one dinner, Rob, for Abby's sake. You keep saying you want to give her more than you have now." That had been the clincher. Abby, 9 years old with her mother's eyes and a smile that could break his heart with its hopefulness. Abby, who needed braces they couldn't afford on his maintenance supervisor's salary. Abby, who deserved more than their small 2-bedroom apartment and secondhand clothes. A memory surfaced sharp and clear as spring water Jennifer in the hospital bed, her once vibrant body now fragile as tissue paper. Her fingers cool against his cheek as she made him promise. "Don't let bitterness steal the joy from her life, Rob, or from yours." Robert blinked away the image, focusing instead on the elegant restaurant around him, the kind of place where a glass of wine cost more than his hourly wage, where people with power and influence made decisions that affected thousands of lives without ever getting their hands dirty. The maitre d' approached his table, the man's expression professionally neutral, though his eyes revealed momentary confusion at Robert's presence among the restaurant's usual clientele. "Sir, your party hasn't arrived yet." Robert glanced at his watch again. "Not yet. Should be any minute." "Very good, sir. May I bring you something while you wait? Perhaps a cocktail or an appetizer?" Robert thought of the carefully budgeted amount in his wallet. "Just water is fine, thanks." The maitre d' nodded and retreated, leaving Robert alone again with his thoughts. Through the window beside him, the city lights glittered beautiful and distant, like opportunities that always seemed just beyond his reach. Outside Bordeaux Hall, the black Bentley's door opened, and Victoria Harrington emerged like a force of nature. Tall and striking at 42, she moved with the confidence of someone who commanded rooms before speaking a single word. Her tailored charcoal suit, Armani custom cut to her precise measurements, cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payments. Diamond studs winked from her ears, their simplicity only emphasizing their exceptional quality. Victoria handed her keys to the valet without looking at him. Her attention already focused on her phone, where emails continued to demand responses even at this hour. The young man nervously dropped the keys, fumbling to retrieve them from the pavement. Victoria's gaze flicked toward him, briefly cold and assessing. That's a $50,000 vehicle. Perhaps handling it requires more competence than you currently possess. The valet's face flushed crimson. I'm so sorry, Ms. Harrington. It won't happen again. See that it doesn't? Her voice carried the practiced precision of someone who had long ago mastered making people uncomfortable with minimal effort. As Victoria approached the entrance, her mind calculated outcomes and contingencies, a perpetual spreadsheet of risk assessment and strategic planning. Tonight's dinner with Jonathan Peters from Pioneer Investments could secure the additional funding needed to acquire Stellaris Technologies, the final piece she needed to complete her 5-year expansion plan. The restaurant doors opened before she reached them, Martin rushing forward with a rigid smile. Ms. Harrington, welcome back to Bordeaux Hall. Your table is ready, of course. Victoria nodded curtly, handing her cashmere coat to the waiting hostess. She surveyed the restaurant with the same critical eye that had evaluated countless boardrooms and business proposals. Nothing escaped her notice, not the slightly uneven flower arrangement near the bar, not the couple in the center who spoke too loudly, not the solitary man in the corner whose clothes marked him as obviously out of place. As Martin led her toward her usual table, Victoria's mind momentarily drifted to a scene from 15 years earlier. A cramped apartment with secondhand furniture. The smell of burned coffee as she worked through the night, developing the algorithm that would eventually become the foundation of Harrington Technologies. The letter from her fiancé Richard, left on the kitchen counter beside her, emptied bank account statements. Your obsession with success is pathological. I've found someone who understands the meaning of balance. 2 weeks later, she discovered he'd also taken her preliminary patent applications to her competitor. The betrayal had been complete, personal and professional, love and livelihood, all in one calculated strike. That night, alone in the darkened apartment, Victoria had made herself a promise. Never again would she be vulnerable. Never again would she put faith in anything except her own intellect and determination. Never again would she mistake kindness for strength. The memory hardened her expression as she followed Martin through the restaurant. When they reached her reserved table, Victoria stopped abruptly. The angle was wrong, the lighting too harsh, the proximity to the kitchen doors unacceptable. This isn't my usual table, she stated, her tone making it clear that explanations would be insufficient. Martin's professional composure cracked slightly. I'm terribly sorry, Ms. Harrington. There must have been some confusion with the reservation system. Your usual table is table 12, but what? Victoria's gaze was unflinching. We had a water pipe issue near that section earlier today. Martin explained, sweat now visible at his temples. Maintenance assured us it's repaired, but we thought perhaps the noise was... I don't pay premium prices for substandard accommodations. Victoria interrupted. My guest will be arriving shortly, and I require the proper setting. Her eyes scanned the restaurant, settling on the corner table where Robert sat alone. That table, it has the appropriate lighting and privacy. Martin's face paled. Table 14 is currently occupied, Ms. Harrington. Then unoccupy it. Victoria began walking toward Robert's table without waiting for a response, her heels striking the marble floor with decisive precision. Behind her, Martin followed, murmuring desperate apologies. Robert looked up as they approached, immediately noting the woman's authoritative presence and the manager's obvious distress. The restaurant had grown strangely quiet, ambient conversation dimming, as if someone had gradually turned down the volume. Victoria stopped directly beside his table, her gaze coolly appraising. This table is more suitable for my meeting. The management will happily relocate you to accommodate my reservation. It wasn't a request, it was a statement of fact delivered with the certainty of someone unaccustomed to refusal. For a moment, Robert simply looked at her, taking in the expensive suit, the perfect posture, the absolute confidence that her needs automatically superseded his own. In that moment, Robert thought of his daughter Abby asking him why some kids at school had new sneakers, while she wore second-hand ones from the thrift store. He remembered his careful explanation about different families having different resources, but how that didn't make anyone better or worse, just different. He thought about the values he worked so hard to instill in her, treating others with dignity, regardless of their status, standing firm when it mattered, choosing kindness even when it wasn't convenient. Robert responded with a calm that came from facing far worse crises than an entitled executive. "Ma'am, I'm waiting for someone important. I was seated here because I specifically requested a quiet corner, but," he gestured to the empty chair across from him, "you're welcome to share the table if you'd like." Victoria's expression flickered with momentary surprise before settling back into cool displeasure. People didn't say no to her, especially not men wearing off-the-rack shirts with frayed collars. "Perhaps I wasn't clear," she continued, her voice lowering slightly. "I'm Victoria Harrington, CEO of Harrington Technologies. I have a critically important business dinner, and this location is ideal for my purposes." The name registered with Robert. Even someone disconnected from the corporate world recognized Victoria Harrington, whose face had graced business magazines and whose ruthless acquisition strategies were legendary. The woman was worth billions, had buildings named after her, could probably buy this entire restaurant on a whim. Still, Robert didn't move. "I understand who you are, Ms. Harrington, but I also understand that my meeting is important too, at least to me and my daughter. I was here first, and I'd appreciate the same courtesy I'd show anyone else." The restaurant had gone completely silent now. Staff stood frozen against walls, watching the unprecedented confrontation unfold. Victoria's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Do you have any idea what my time is worth? What decisions affecting thousands of jobs happen during dinners like the one I'm about to have?" Robert met her gaze directly. "I imagine quite a lot, and I respect that, but respect goes both ways regardless of who's giving or receiving it." Something in his steady tone, not argumentative, not intimidated, simply matter-of-fact, caught Victoria off guard. People typically responded to her in one of two ways: obsequious agreement or defensive hostility. This man offered neither. Martin interjected desperately. "Ms. Harrington, we could prepare the private dining room upstairs immediately. It would offer even more privacy for your meeting." Victoria didn't acknowledge the suggestion, her attention fixed on Robert. After a calculated pause, she made a decision that surprised even herself. With deliberate grace, she pulled out the chair opposite him and sat down. "Then we'll share," she stated as if it had been her idea all along. "My guests will be joining shortly." The collective tension in the restaurant released slightly, though conversations resumed at a more subdued volume. Martin signaled frantically to the staff, who scrambled to adjust to this unexpected development. Robert watched as Victoria arranged herself precisely in the chair, placing her phone face up on the table, her movements efficient and controlled. She looked at him properly for the first time, her assessment clinical and thorough. "Since we'll be sharing space, perhaps introductions are in order, though you apparently already know who I am. Robert Morgan. I supervise maintenance operations for Westridge Properties." Victoria's slight grimace revealed exactly what she thought of his occupation. Fixing leaky faucets and changing light bulbs. How essential. The condescension in her tone was unmistakable. Robert could have let it slide, could have shrunk beneath her obvious disdain. Instead, he leaned forward slightly. "Last month, I identified a critical failure in a primary electrical system at Mercy Hospital before it could affect their operating rooms. 3 surgeries were in progress at the time. I've designed backup systems that have prevented catastrophic failures during power outages, implemented preventative maintenance protocols that have saved companies millions, and trained teams that keep buildings functioning safely when most people don't even think about what's happening behind their walls." He paused, his expression unchanged. "But yes, I also fix leaky faucets and change light bulbs." Victoria raised an eyebrow, mildly intrigued despite herself. "Defensive about your profession, Mr. Morgan." "Not defensive, just accurate. There's dignity in work that keeps things running even when it's invisible to most people. A servant approached, tentatively placing a glass of water